Okay, Andy, if you're looking for a race rep, then look no further than Kawasaki ZX7R Ninja. The 7R has 748 cc's of screaming four-cylinder motor to provide all the performance you should ever need. 120 bhp is the claimed output of the motor, so although it's only a 750, it'll sit fairly happily alongside litre class machines. It's on sale today at 4,600 quid.
Hello there. 4,600 quid could actually get you a lot back in the days. It could actually get you a couple of Keihin carburetors paired up with a 750cc inline 4 engine from Kawasaki. It could get you a 6-speed sporty transmission. All of this producing about 120 horses of JDM Fury, and all at your local Kawasaki dealership, wrapped up inside a green gift from Team Green of Kawasaki.
See, during the 80s, there was a large wave of motorcycle racing, an uprising even. And in 1988, all of this was proven by the success of the Superbike World Championship.
Tardozzi just taking over the lead there. I think it's worth pointing out at this stage that when they wrote the rules for Superbike, they were designed to create close racing, and it's working out perfectly at this stage.
Some 10 seconds in front of Marco Lucanelli, then a big gap to Stefan Mertens, and a further gap to this race, fourth place between Merkel and Dunlop.
During that, all of this though meant that anybody with a brain really could go out into any dealership that they had around, and they could buy this bike. So, you know, not really the best idea here.
The ZX7R was Kawasaki's response to the many upcoming 750cm category superbikes. It was new, fast and powerful. And of course, just about anybody could buy it.
Anyway though, that's besides the point. This bike is a ZX7R from 2002. And I just think that this is a very, very special era of motorcycles, but specifically sport bikes. That early 2000s era, I feel, had so much extra and just a very good time for bikes.
The ZX7R wasn't also a stranger to winning. It actually had many, many titles and feats during its time around. Kawasaki actually returned to the FIM races with the ZX7R, and during these times, they actually won every race from 91, 92, 93, 94, and also all the way up until 96, running off of that ZX7R base and motorcycle. In 1990, Doug Chandler actually won with this bike as well off of a Muzzy prepped ZX7R. And in 91 and 92, Russell Scott actually won the 750 World Superbike Championship with the same Kawasaki engine. So, you know, it wasn't really a bad motorcycle, especially for the price it was. You could say it was the broke man superbike because it wasn't the most expensive and it wasn't the most high performance beast there was out there during the time. But even with all that being said, they still won many things. And in fact, they actually even, from 91 to 99, they won the Canadian Superbike Championship every single year. And that was being put up against many different motorcycles. Like we have Honda's RC series, which was always a big winner. And even things like the Yamaha, which as well, huge in the game, huge in motorcycles, of course. And both of these motorcycles were great, they were amazing, but although the Kawasaki was maybe less expensive as opposed to the rest of its competition, and maybe take away the Yamaha because I think that one was a little less expensive, but from those two, Kawasaki was still able to go on a 9-year-in-a-row win streak in Canada, which is, I'd say, really amazing or really surprising for the bike it was.
Just listen to that engine. Oh. I hope that the microphone really picks it up how I hear it. And this is just with a stock exhaust. And this bike really is pretty much all OEM and stock, other than a couple things like the grips, the levers. But other than that, this bike is stock. and it's in original form. And I think that for these bikes and for these years, that is the best way to enjoy them. I think that till today, this bike still holds up pretty well, which is, I think, a sign of just how good they were. It holds up to bikes these days, and I wouldn't say it's a really heavy bike per se. You know, there's some bikes like, I've ridden a Hurricane, the Honda 1000F, and that bike I'd say is pretty heavy, and this bike does feel pretty light and pretty nimble. The carbs do a good job of giving you that power, and it's pretty snappy, like that.
In 1996, the ZX7 got an update, which was one of the biggest updates, and it was actually kind of an innovator, really. It had many new things, and it had many things that would set the bar and set the stage for bikes to come later. It would open and pave paths for bikes that would come after it. It would also just introduce some new technology and new feats that they haven't been seen at the time, which made it a really special bike, especially from where it was coming from and the time that it was coming in. From this uprise of racing and just superbike culture in general, which is where it was kind of really born. And it was just born at the exact time where it could really start off and do really well. I think that if it was any other time, it wouldn't have done the same way. And if it was a newer bike, it also wouldn't have done the same. We really know that 750s now and then are completely different. The 750 back then was aimed to be one of the highest and top sport bikes of the market, as compared to now where it's meant to be more of a street torquey, street inclined machine where it's more comfortable. And you know, I think that obviously back then they were better subjectively, but they just had something more special that we kind of miss now. Bikes are coming out as inline 2s or inline 3s, but the Kawasaki ZX7R was just such a good line, and the inline 4 sound revving up in that category is just a really iconic sound that I don't think can be mistaken or replaced by anything else.
I feel like those years were pretty special years for bike riding and motorcycles in general. I feel like now it's better to make an engine that is a lot more usable on the street, a lot more comfortable on the street, and you know, as a daily commuter it's better, but it's just this that you miss. These RPMs, the way the engine feels. And another thing is how raw it feels. I have no electronic assist whatsoever. Everything here is completely raw and done. It is mainly 100% the skill of the rider that determines how good the motorcycle is. And I feel that now, in these years, we have kind of missed that in a way. Not missed, but we have kind of gotten rid of that. There's a lot of electronic assist and a lot of things where the motorcycle makes up for some mistakes, and the motorcycle makes the rider a little better. You can't just put this thing into rain mode and have it produce less power, or put it into sport mode and then increase your power. It is full power, full time, 100%, and it's all raw. And just listen to this. Like, it's just, I really hope the mic picks that up, but it just sounds so good. Another really important thing is, I believe, just the sound. Now, a triple is not going to give you the sound this thing does. A twin is not going to give you the sound this thing does. Yeah, they can sound good. You put a nice exhaust on them, but it still doesn't give you that sound of revving 4 cylinders. 8,000, 9,000, 10,000.
Many of the updates of this year included a lot of things that were proceeding from the past years. For example, we had a stiffer frame and better suspension to increase better stability and better rideability of the bike taking corners. and overall a more stable motorcycle. It had bigger forks at the front, and it actually had a better spring in the rear so that it could dampen some of those bumps on the road and take it a little better. Also on track, you were gonna use that a lot more than just on the road. Since it was stiffer, it could actually take the corner a lot better. It wouldn't wobble the way through, and that is just one of the things that it had done. It also increased the bore by width instead of the stroke length. By doing this, it could allow a little bit higher RPMs, and it also kept the same 750 category, which was better, and not many were doing it, since at the time they would increase the stroke instead of the bore, as opposed to Kawasaki, which did the opposite. We also have a new weight now, and it was now 448 pounds as opposed to the previous years, which it was a lot heavier, and it also increased the degrees of the valves on top of the cylinder and the head. It was now at a 25-degree angle as opposed to the previous years of 20 degrees. And all of this allowed for a better, more stable motorcycle, which just improved the way it handled, the way it drove, the way it sounded, and just the way it looked as well. It now had the 2 ram air intakes at the sides next to the headlights, which it previously did not. And all of this made up for probably the reasons why it won many races. As example, we previously stated, it won 9 years in a row in Canada. It also won many of the endurance races, and it won many of the AMAs. And it sure didn't sound like that. It sounded a lot better. But that is why Kawasaki actually made a really good motorcycle and a legend, and one of the bikes that would make way for other bikes, one of the bikes that would make path for the other ones. We wouldn't have many of these other ones if it wasn't for some of these bikes that came out during these years. The 80s and the 90s were one of the uprisings for motorsports, and specifically for motorcycle racing, super bikes. That is when we started to see a very deep culture into super bikes and motorcycle racing in general.
Not all of these bikes are made for the same sole purpose and the same reason. They are not made in the same time, and they are each different with a purpose-built focus. I know that your new R7 might be a good bike, but it isn't raw and it isn't dangerous. It isn't made with limited technology pushed all the way to the limit. And that's just an era that we may never see again. The end of an era, sadly.
Today, motorcycling history is being made. We're here at Donington Park, right in the heart of the English countryside, for the opening race in the first ever World Superbike Championship.
I hope that you enjoyed. As I said, this bike is actually going to be for sale and is going to be up for auction. So in about a week, it is going to go up for auction, and I'll probably leave the link down below once it comes up. I can't as of now, or whenever this video comes out. I'm sure it's going to be about half a week from when the video comes out. So after that, you can go bid on the motorcycle, and if you know anybody that might be interested in it, please send it over. Also, for any needs for titling, registration, stuff like that, I have a link down below for Dirt Legal. They could title your bikes, your motorcycle, your car, import, even boats. So, make sure to check that out. The link helps me out, and you also get your vehicle on the road. So, thank you very much, and have a great rest of your day.